Hey, this is Nick the Mining Book Guy. It is the very early morning of Tuesday, August 7th, 2018, and I've got likely a final Mundoro video, at least for the foreseeable future, because I've been making a bunch of these. This was going to be focused just on JOGMEC and their exciting drilling at Borsko, and then out of nowhere we got this I wouldn't necessarily say more exciting, but definitely more of a head turner having Mundoro and Freeport McMoran sign a blockbuster agreement for two of the South Timok licenses. We're going to get into that. We're still going to cover the exciting Borsko drilling, not in as much detail as I originally planned, but the goal here is to show you that this is just ridiculous, like stupid cheap. Mundoro is stupid cheap right now. Whatever I say is probably not going to change anything at this stage, but just keep in mind, still my largest position. I'm actually going to explain to you now why it's so difficult for me to sell anything, and really, hopefully, reinforce why there is something special going on here, and you should really be paying attention, even if you're not a shareholder, for the rest of the year. Couple quick notes in case this is the first video you're watching of mine. I made one back in April, first video, and then I made a second one in May, and they cover a lot of stuff, so this one should be a little shorter. But funny, Wally asked me, hey, we haven't seen any news lately, asked about a week ago, and roughly, probably within a day or two, another person who I think subscribes to me, Sabu Joseph, also asked a similar thing. I wrote back to both of them about that I was going to cover the Borsko drilling, but again, this Freeport drilling came out of nowhere. But what surprises me is that Mundoro is doing so much, but it seems like people think there's not too much going on. I don't know. I don't know what to make of all of that, but despite what I consider exciting news, there was this really weird situation where there were a huge amount of cross trades and probably the most volume at any time in at least the last 3 years. This happened just about a month ago. And so that in itself was kind of interesting, where anybody could have gotten into this stock. And interestingly, a guy I've come across, Dan Mahoney. So, shout out to Dan. It's funny, he still has this pinned tweet, easy two-bagger, which actually he kind of was right on that. This is just from about a month ago. Well, Dan, he came out of the blue and told me that he saw technical indicators that, this was a good entry point, despite not really knowing anything about the fundamentals of the company. So we've had a couple messages back and forth. I know he's done quite well, this is what people like Dan look for, who are a little more trader oriented. Nothing wrong with that, but it's amazing, to come into a company and be able to make 50 or 100% within a month. But the point I'm trying to make is that there's been interesting things going on both from the news side and both from the trading side. Actually, I'll zoom in here. Yeah, and you can see it actually traded up to 20 cents or just above 20 cents. Not with as much volume as prior, but on that Freeport news. So no one can complain about liquidity. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities to get in at this stage. Maybe it is a little more difficult. I'm surprised it's still trading at 15 cents, but I think this should be trading at a minimum of 25 cents, if not 30 cents. I thought that before the Freeport agreement. So I wanted to give that commentary. And also, I did sell some shares at 16 cents. I sold exactly 20,000 shares. I'm not going to tell you exactly how much I own. I own a ridiculous amount, more than 20,000 shares. But I'm telling you, it didn't feel right. There's too much value in this company for me to be selling when it's at a 10 million market cap and a 5 or 6 million enterprise value. It's absurd. So just wanted to mention that. I probably would sell more, if we're getting closer to 25 or 30 cents or something like that. But I'm selling other stocks, and if this actually came back down to 12 or 13 cents again. It did touch 13 cents just, even after the Freeport news. I would probably be a buyer. Yeah, I do think this is a much better buy at 13 or 14 cents right now than it was at, below 10 cents, where I had purchased most of my shares before that Freeport news. Now, it's not too complicated to understand, but what I love is that TO did a couple interviews. This actually makes my job a lot easier. So if you this is the main thing you get out of my video, it's just sharing these other two videos, and I'm going to share parts that I thought were particularly important. So listen in here for about a minute and a half.
Doro, tell us about this partnership that you have got yourselves into now.
Absolutely. So the partnership is with Freeport McMoran, the exploration vehicle they own. Freeport has actually been out in Serbia for the last 10 years. So we're quite excited that we have an opportunity now to work together on two licenses that we have in the TSXV complex. So the way that the joint venture is structured, there's two phases. Phase one, they come in and they spend through sole funding $5 million in order to earn in 51%.
Okay.
And at that point, there's a decision to be made. Do you want to proceed to phase two? And phase two is by earning an additional 24%, they would have to spend an additional $40 million. So the total transaction is 75% for spending $45 million, and all of that is in US dollars, which in prior years wasn't a big difference, but in today's exchange rate is actually quite beneficial from a Canadian company point of view. So after the end of the second phase, they own 75%, and what Mundoro can really do is decide, do we dilute down? And if we dilute down below 10%, then we automatically convert into a 2% royalty, half of which can be purchased back by Freeport. So it's actually a really interesting transaction because it doesn't require the company to fund the projects unless we choose to. And if we do dilute down, we actually have potentially a very valuable royalty in an asset that would be the size of something that's of interest to a major.
Was this a best case scenario?
So hopefully you picked up on a few key things there. I love the way that Tio explained the royalty. I would not have been able to explain that so eloquently. And that's important. It's not something that's super unique, but this is the type of thing where that Tio is trying to maximize shareholder value for Mundoro shareholders by getting that royalty. Like she said, there's always the chance that Mundoro could be diluted down after we get through, the big spend in this agreement in phase two, and that really, really puts a backstop on the value. But in addition to that, without going into details, this is super unique here. This $100,000 annual fee for every year for 10 years, that only comes into play if Freeport completes phase one but doesn't want to go all in on phase two. I love that that's in there. Again, just another thing that I think really reinforces that this is a very solid deal. And if I could compare it to Freeport and Reservoir, when Reservoir made their big discovery that has now turned into Nevsun and that is now in play as a multi-billion-dollar company, I was looking through the CDR documents, the MD&As, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's very important to know that even though I couldn't 100% verify whether Reservoir really was fully carried by Freeport. There were a few documents I couldn't completely verify, but the most important thing is that they actually got to roughly $30 million USD spend from beginning to the first bid by Nevsun and the Lundins. So the point is, this is up to a $45 million USD spend. It's very possible that upon discovery or and drilling, that M&A activity happens way before you get through that spend. That is the case study that shows you it's already happened. So it's great to have all of this backstop type stuff, but just having this huge spend here is hugely positive. It's not that different in terms of the types of agreements that you'll see Rio Tinto has already done in the Timok area, but it's still fantastic to have all of that on the backside. The JOGMEC agreement is excellent too. So now we've got two world-class agreements in a world-class district. Either Freeport on its own or JOGMEC on its own, honestly, could very easily be worth more than the current market cap of Mundoro today. But we have both of them, so that's easily double right there. And again, the absurdity of the small valuation of Mundoro. But there's more. You can the rest of this interview, or much of the rest of it, talks more about JOGMEC, and I thought it was very good, but no reason for us to go through it. Definitely check below this video for links of this video and anything else I'm sharing right now. But I wanted to bring up a great question. Shout out to a friend, Investigator, who I don't think has really looked at Mundoro much, but he asked me some good questions, which I didn't really want to answer at the time. But in short, how do I feel about Mundoro being the operator and versus Freeport in phase one, and then whether I'd care to speculate whether Freeport will move fast or slow. So part of this, what's fantastic, was I thought answered very clearly in a second interview that Tio did, which happens to be my friend Trevor Hall, who runs this great new service, MiningStockDaily, and I've tried to be a supporter of it. He's on a lot of different platforms. This is Anchor FM, but you can definitely find it on iTunes. That might be the most common for some people. This is a little longer, and I'm going to show a picture for part of this, so it's worth paying attention, but just keep in mind this will be about 3.5 minutes.
But I was really interested in the news release itself. Under the agreement, Mundoro remains the operator of this joint venture. And why is this important for Mundoro and its shareholders?
It is important for us, and I think the way to think about it is really from in kind of like a holistic point of view of the asset. We acquired this asset, and then acquired and staked this asset back in 2012. So we've been with this project working with various, for example, we had First Quantum involved in 2015. We've been working on this project every year for the last 5 years. And it would be a mistake to just switch operator to an entirely new group. What you really want is continuity of information. And particularly, we have established very good relationships with the local community there. And as a result, one of our objectives and a lot of our conversations with any third party that's interested in partnering with us is to really maintain that continuity in the first phase. So for phase one, it's important that we maintain our operatorship, and that's what we've done, both with our JOGMEC transaction and with the Freeport transaction. And we also get paid a management fee for being the operator. So that's another way for us to basically, diversify our risk in terms of expenditures. It allows us to really, as a company, ideally what we'd love to be in a situation is where we are sustainable as an exploration company. We're not losing money every year, but actually we don't want to go back to shareholders every year in order to just maintain a company. The company's strategy really should be taking care of that. So we think that this partnership model has worked really well so far, and obviously, we want to be able to continue doing that in the future.
Now, I wanted to kind of take a step and look at the area that you guys have licensed for exploration there in Serbia. And it's interesting to note that sandwiched between this new Freeport JV area and your JOGMEC JV licensed area is both the Rakita property. Am I pronouncing that right? Rakita?
Yes, their local company is at Akita.
Okay, and licensed by both Nevsum and Freeport, along with two different properties licensed by you, Mundoro, and available for potential joint ventures as well. So can you share with us any information regarding conversations about those two properties? What are some similarities and differences in geology that you're finding in those two areas as opposed to the other areas that you have JVs with?
So all four licenses which we called the South Timmins package, of which 2 have now been, optioned off to Freeport. All 4 licenses are within the southern half of the Timmins complex. So geologically, they're very similar. What we wanted to do, and it's important for us to ensure that all the licenses have a fair share of expenditures in terms of investment in order to determine, if the targets are good and to really test those targets. And it's really hard to do that when there's 400 square kilometers. So it was important for us to separate the package, because if you think about it, with JOGMEC, our license area is about 150 square kilometers. With the Freeport transaction, that's about, let's say, 225 square kilometers. So the remaining portion, which is, I think, still around 200 square kilometers, I think that's a lot of ground. And so what we really wanted to make sure is that anyone that we partner with could really take on the entire land package, and hence why, we separated the southern package into 2. And now we're in continuing conversations with interested third parties about that piece of ground that's available for optioning.
It's very interesting.
So I was fooling around with the cursor as Tio was talking. This is so huge, but the market doesn't get it yet. I'm just thoroughly impressed that not only was that a fantastic deal with Freeport, but it's only for these 2 small licenses. I give Trevor credit for even asking this question, because I feel a lot of people probably missed this, but it was right at the. This is a great tip for newbies. Always make sure you read a whole news release, because this was incredibly important information. Mundoro is definitely in talks and has been in talks to JV these other 2. That's what Trevor was referring to. So you've got Kukarupeki and you've got Nevsun over here. So you've already got JOGMEC up here. We've got this new Freeport right here, and these are still 100% owned. So who knows who it'll be? An immediate guess could be Rio Tinto. Wouldn't that be amazing if Mundoro had deals with Rio, JOGMEC, and Freeport? I mean, it would just, the market would absolutely have to pay attention. It should be paying more attention right now, but that's just one idea. I don't know, Dundee, Precious Metals. There's other companies that are definitely interested here, but that was really important to ask. And the first section of that, the playback I just did about the operatorship, I think that answers Investigator's question. I did want to make a point about I met with Tio a few times at the Sprott Symposium. Great meetings. Too much information for me to share here, but there were a few things, especially related to the second part of Investigator's questions. Yeah, so my interpretation, based on asking Tio these types of questions, there are drill targets that are immediately ready to test. That's important, because, and this is actually something I've talked about with Tio. Like, Mundoro doesn't want to call themselves a prospect generator and give this almost non-worked land to a major and let them control it. This is very, very different from that. Mundoro is the operator, has a lot of say in what's going on, and there's been a lot of work done, as she said, over the last 5 years or so. Now, the licenses I believe they do need to be transferred, and this is not unusual, but that means it may take a few months for that to happen, so you won't really hear much about this. But I believe Mundoro and Freeport are very excited to get drilling going. So my best guess is that by Q4, we're going to see activity here. I mean, definitely by the beginning of next year. I just couldn't see it going beyond that. But that's great, because JOGMEC's doing the exciting drilling with Borsko right now, so it makes a really nice 1-2 punch as 2 big things going on. And then, of course, we have some interesting stuff. Well, actually, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in Bulgaria. We're not going to get into that in this video, but there should be results from the smaller scale JV on one of the Bulgaria projects as well. So, 3 deals right now, possibly a 4th big deal, and consider listen. I mean, this is, I think, the better interview. Unfortunately, the sound didn't come in perfectly, but this is a 17-minute interview. There's really great information about the share structure, the capital structure immediately after the section I had you listen to. And near the end, I loved Tio's answer to Trevor's question about value proposition. So again, links below this video. This is really, really grade A stuff. So yeah, probably the best thing out of me talking to you is just distributing this content. And this picture was just from the bottom of the, yes, right down here, bottom of this Freeport news release. Well, I'm getting to what I was originally going to focus on, and I'm going to spend much less time than I expected, but maybe that's for the best, because there's a lot of technical terminology here, and rather than trying to explain it all, I had a very good talk with Tio about this, but I'm going to give you my most basic layman interpretation of like 2 key points where I'm glad I spoke with her to confirm or at least, you know, help me realize, okay, these are the 2 things I really got out of this, and I'm still kind of shocked how the market doesn't care about this this news release that came out about a month ago. So we've got 5,000 meters expected to be drilled at Borsko, and we clearly have this target 5 and target 1. I think these pictures are so important. Oh yeah, I mean, I really like this one because you get an overlay of geophysics, and then you have a lot of commentary on it. But there's some subtle things that are so important here. So the initial discovery of the alteration were hole 7, 6, and then you had follow-up holes, and it was hole 11 and hole 12 that actually had some mineralization. For instance, hole 11, 15 meters of 1 gram per ton gold and just a little bit of silver. Not economic, but what we're seeing is that there's a chargeability high, and there's been different types of geophysical testing, which makes it seem like a step out hole could get to potentially get to economic mineralization. What I found so important but kind of simple is that if this work didn't take place, both holes 11 and hole 12 were very interesting. But you can see here with hole 12, there's nothing really going around it. While here with hole 11, this geophysical anomaly matches up here. Now it's a little deeper, so it will be a deep hole, but this doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it means, yes, Mundoro could be onto something. There could be economic mineralization in the next hole here. That's really important because if they didn't, there could have been step out holes done, near hole 12 just as much as hole 11 if we didn't have this information, and that would likely be a waste of time and money for Mundoro. So at least we're going in the right direction here. But then target 5 is very intriguing because the geophysical anomaly actually is stronger. I think the chargeability high is stronger, but there hasn't been any drilling done up here yet. And I think it's even interesting that you see it could continue up here. Now, it's costly and time consuming to do all this type of testing, but what's nice is that not only do we have 2 different targets to test immediately, but Tio confirmed to me that we could argue that they are equally interesting. Now, importantly, target 1's the one that already has holes in it. I would say, from a layman point of view, this one hasn't had any holes yet, but the anomaly is actually shallower. So if we can get it's economic mineralization that's actually closer to surface, and the fact that it's unknown, maybe there'll be some big hit right away. It doesn't, we don't know. But what's neat is that we're going to have holes here, we're going to have a hole here, and then we'll go from there. It's a great program because JOGMEC really wants to find that economic mineralization. This is going for the home run right here, and there's enough money, like $1.5 million USD being funded so that follow-up holes can immediately go in. And I guess the only thing that maybe I'm still wondering about is, are we really going to wait until November to get results? That's the current plan, but maybe there still could be something that comes out before then. I would say that that's just that's something you have to be aware of. I still think the stock should be ramping up more. There should be more interest at this stage, but don't be surprised if we get towards September, when the drilling is supposed to be done, and getting to October, November, that more and more people get interested. So hopefully that was helpful. I would probably be happy if I had time to go through this with people, privately, if you message me on CEO.CA. But I can't emphasize enough that I still consider this news release and this work being done with JOGMEC to be far more of a value driver than the current, this new JV with Freeport. I mean, this is huge. This validates the South Timok project. It gives them a lot of value, but I am super excited about the JOGMEC Borsko drilling, and I'm also really excited about what could happen in Bulgaria, but that's down the road too. There's just so much going on. This has definitely been a little longer than I expected, but I'm just going to go with it. Again, check out my previous videos if you want more. I mean, you've got the 2 links to TO stuff. There's a lot of great stuff to do your own research. Most exciting, bar none, most exciting small company out there, super undervalued. I'm not telling you need to go out and buy. You do need to do your own due diligence. This is a stock to watch for the rest of this year. Can't emphasize enough how interesting all of this is. All right, time for me to go to bed because I need to travel early in the morning. But thank you for listening. This is Nick, the Mining Book Guy. I will talk to you soon. Cheers. Bye.